Dictionary defines trans as a prefix denoting changing or crossing over. In contemporary culture, the term trans is quite extensive, relating to a number of diverse identities such as intersex, queer, transsexual, transvestite, drag, and cross-dressing. In feminist theory, the term transgender brings to light a number of issues surrounding traditional binary concepts. Christopher Clark claims that its cultural effect has the ability to destabilize all boundaries, not only male and female, but also gay and straight, sex and gender, as well as cultural boundaries, which I will touch on later. Transgenderism is by definition invested in change, changing one's body, gender, or by extension changing society's opinions or feminist theories. While transgenderism is celebrated by post-structuralist feminists as being subversive parody of these traditional binary notions, a number of other feminists claim that expressions of drag and transness reaffirm oppressive heteronormative stereotypes, like in Janice Raymond's 1980s The Transsexual Empire, or Sheila Jeffrey's claim that transgenderism goes as far as to oppose feminism altogether by reinforcing false and constructed notions of correct femininity and masculinity. Judith Butler, on the other hand, opposes this with her theory of performativity. Using drag as an example, Butler asserts that there are parallels between drag and the performance of gender in everyday life. Gender is an impersonation that passes for real, but she states that there is no real identity behind these expressions of gender. Identity is constituted by the very expressions that are said to be its results. In other words, trans people are not the cause of the reinforcement of heteronormative notions of gender, they are merely mirroring what society has already created. Henry Rubin further emphasizes this, claiming that feminism arises not out of biological notions of womanhood, but instead out of political practice, stating that a feminist is someone who acts out of feminist ideals. Feminist literature, despite all its progressive messages of change, has been criticized for being overly complicated and theoretical. For this reason, it has often struggled to enter the mainstream. Film, on the other hand, provides a logical expression for the debates surrounding transgenderism to reach the public, due to it being a more wide-reaching mode of representation. I am going to be examining how the film Lola und Bilidikid translates the concerns of Paris is Burning for a German audience. There's a lot I could talk about here, so I'm just going to touch on a few points such as intersectionality, hopes and dreams, and issues of realness. Germany's history in relation to queers is rather unique, mainly due to the persecution of all non-Aryans in the Second World War, which largely included homosexuals but also many other members of the queer spectrum. Ironically, only a few years prior, Berlin had been the centre of queer activity, well known for its cabarets and clubs like those written about by Christopher Isherwood. In spite of the celebration after Germany's reunification, many homophobic and transphobic issues still exist. To crack on with my analysis, Paris is Burning, often defined as one of the most preeminent filmic expressions of transgenderism, was documented by filmmaker Jenny Livingston and released in 1990. Livingston offers us a dazzling look into the glamour and agency of the New York ball scene, whilst shocking us with juxtaposing images of the poverty, abuse and murder the black queer group suffers at the hands of the heteronormative society. Paris is Burning has been criticised by a number of feminist writers for providing a voyeuristic glimpse into the unusual world of the queer black outsiders, a setting that the director herself, being a white Jewish lesbian, is unable to relate to. In spite of this, PIB deals with a number of different trans issues prominent in many aspects of queer culture. Turkish filmmaker Kutluk Ataman further tries to exhibit the difficulties faced by queer outsiders in contemporary culture in his melodramatic film Lola und Bilidikid, 1999, following a group of Turkish queer characters in 20th century Berlin as they struggled to come to terms with their sexuality and gender as well as ethnicity. The mise-en-scène of PIB features an array of images from urban queer life which parallels that of the German queer scene. The characters navigate through areas of poverty like the streets and alleyways and gay hookup sites like the piers and the German Imbiss Cafe. This is combined with images of glitz and fun like the balls and cabarets, yet the overarching themes are that of exile, migration and diaspora. New York, often symbolised as the place of hope for those to make their fortune, is revealed to be a place of destitution and prejudice. The dreams and hopes for those young trans people to be superstars is shown to be hollow and unreachable in a white, heteronormative environment where many do not have a bed to sleep in and abuse and violence lurks at every corner. Just as the reality of the American dream is revealed in PIB, LBK also reveals that the trendy and contemporary Berlin becomes a ruthless and harsh world for those who live outside the comfort of normative society, especially the Stadtmitte. Ataman uses the setting of Berlin to translate the issues of transgender feminism to his German audience. Reunified Berlin is itself a mixture of old and new, a place where the Turkish immigrants blend and cross with the Germans, a place where East meets West and where queers blend into society. Transness is felt all around in the film. Some honourable mentions include the location of Lola's death on the river near an old border crossing. Lola, who is a symbol of transness, described as a Meerfrau, A mermaid, being a mixture of woman and fish, symbolic of Lola's combination of male and female, transcends the old borders of East-West Berlin by floating along the river there. Her transness is also symbolic as a topic which sits on the borders of feminist debate. Similarly, the phallic authority of national power, symbolised by the Siegersäule, is also queered due to its significance as a meeting place for gay men in the park. And the scene with the Olympic Stadium is used as a microcosm for Berlin as a whole, whereby white heteronormative German national pride is represented en masse, as shown through the ostentatious statues and monuments of the Third Reich, one of the utmost symbols of extreme heteronormative society. Yet the underground of outsideness and queerness still lurks in society, as shown through the romantic scene between Murat and one of the bullies in the toilets representing the seedy underbelly of Berlin. Yet unlike PIB, which only shows queer people in places of poverty like street corners or the balls, LBK also reveals that queer people are present in all areas of society, like the glamorous mansions and restaurants frequented by Friedrich and his lover Eiskender, who is able to transgress the boundaries of his class by falling in love. Thus Ataman breaks away from the stereotypical representations of queers as poor minorities. Aside from the mise en scène, the notion of transness is explored further in both films by focusing on transculturation and the issue of intersectionality.
Black and you're a male and you're gay, you're gonna have a hard fucking time.
The majority of characters in PIB are of Black or Latino origin, often treated as subordinates in comparison to their white counterparts. They aspire to have the life of rich white women and men, yet appear naive to the fact that it is the same white authority that causes them degradation and poverty. At no point does Livingston criticise this fact or present it as otherwise. The lack of blame for the treatment of the black queers at the hands of their white counterparts is one of the most negative aspects of the documentary, yet also one that allowed her film to reach such a wide range of people. For instance, the concept of voguing, once a symbol of black queer agency, is only seen as successful when it becomes commodified and reaches the white mainstream audiences. Similarly, reading, once a mechanism for protection against white prejudice, soon becomes adopted by the ballroom scene, as though anything used in combination with white culture becomes cool and fun. This is also translated to a German audience in LBK, where the characters have to deal with the issue of intersectionality, being both Turkish and queer. The performative nature of culture is evident as the Gastarbeiters perform a parody of cultural stereotypes through another notion of parody, which is drag. Yet any progressive notions of drag are frequently juxtaposed with images of homophobia and violence, often as the characters come into conflict with German-born Berliners and are repeatedly victimized and provoked through the film for reasons surrounding issues of identity. Turkish culture is, however, especially criticized here, evident in the fact that Murat's father is supposed to have kicked Lola out upon learning of his sexuality instead of accepting him, whereas the German Imbiss owner and mother of Friedrich are seen as figures who welcome and support the characters. The negative connotations of tradition, also with motherhood, are similarly revealed in PIB, stating that a mother can be any gender or sexuality as long as they perform the role of a caring motherly figure. As a documentary, PIB features a wide range of real characters whose identities, although varying, still widely lean towards the traditional notions of gender. They aspire for realness, the ability to blend into the normal world organised according to traditional conventions of gender and class. Although society does have a clear gender hierarchy, it is shocking to see how far this is taken, as realness is celebrated in the ballrooms with a physical trophy, thus symbolically praising conforming to normative society. Realness is not only confined to ball categories, it is also a critical act they must adopt to be successful in everyday life. Those who fail to pass are at danger of becoming victims of violence and abuse, such as the transsexual Venus Extravaganza, who is revealed later in the film to have been viciously murdered for not adhering to feminine ideals. Livingston, however, barely touches on the topic of her death. No funeral or final water scene like in LBK. The downplaying of Extravaganza's death thus covertly reveals how frequent violence like this must have become in queer black society, that it is almost like an everyday occurrence that barely needs touching on. Ataman, however, doesn't so tightly adhere to ideals of realness. He does offer the character of Billy as the mouthpiece for traditional gender debates. Named after the masculine hero Bilidikid, an attractive and brutish character, Billy desires a Turkish life above all else. In spite of being in love with a man, he is in denial about his sexuality and wants to live the white heterosexual dream, marrying Lola and forcing her to get a sex change, marriage being a legal speech act which reaffirms heteronormative values. He claims in one scene that you are only gay if you take it from another man, and that by giving it you remain heterosexual. Unlike PIB, however, which just accepts these desires without challenging them, LBK presents a counter-argument, one that states it is okay to be a modern queer Turkish Berliner. Lola's admission to Billy that he is in fact gay, combined with the fact that neither Turkish nor German society permit a world which is accepting of them, sends Billy over the edge in a violent scene, one where his physical castration of a gang member represents the violent dangers of traditional gender roles as a mirror of sex change operations. His misogynistic, hateful worldview is a model that neither the characters nor the audience can identify with. As a result, the audience is left exploring and being open to modern feminist ideals, which explore a spectrum of sexual identities, like the drag-wearing Lola, the transgender Calypso, whose scene with her neighbour makes us question whether she is in drag now or whether her masculine identity had been a disguise, the effeminate Cesarat, and the masculine Billy. Atterman claims that he is not condemning the traditional model of identity, but instead he opposes any society which oppresses the minority. It could be argued, however, that the final scene where Calypso and Cesarat discover their fortune and flirt openly with the taxi driver reveals a hopeful outlook on postmodernist modern identities, a Berlin which is open to all genders and ethnicities, whereby those who adhere to binary notions are either murdered or left in despair. Both films succeed in challenging heteronormative notions of gender, sex and sexuality to both an American and German audience, offering audiences a glimpse into the hidden world of queer life whilst questioning the very constructs that define them.